kilowatts in that morning. The kilowatt hours, excuse me. Now, it is a roof mount. I was pleasantly surprised with one item I was not expecting. The bedroom is actually upstairs. In the summertime, it heats up enormously up there. With the panels, I would say the temperature drops by about 20 degrees upstairs. So it was a nice little extra savings in energy that I had not anticipated. One question I receive out a lot of people is, you know, do I have battery backup? That seems to be very popular. People want to know about it. Unless you're really living remotely on a mountaintop, the batteries don't make a lot of sense. They're more expense, more maintenance. So these systems, I believe everyone else who has spoken, we feed directly into the grid. It goes back and forth. If the grid loses power, we also lose power. The system will shut itself down automatically. That way line workers won't be electrocuted. So if you are really worried about those power outages, I would say a generator makes a lot more sense than having batteries. Let's see. Just a few quick numbers. Supposedly the average home uses about 920 kilowatt hours per month. New York State, average price of kilowatt hours is 17.4 cents. We are the third most expensive in the country, which is one of the reasons that these things actually do make sense. When I installed mine 3.5 years ago, the cost was $43,000. It certainly sounds like a big whopping amount. NYS picked up over $20,000 of that. There was another $7,000 in tax incentives. And NYS also had a program that up to $20,000 you could finance through a home equity loan that they would pay the first 4% on. At the time, I estimated my payback would probably be on the order of 16 years, depending on how much electric rates increased. I had just spoken with the company that installed this, find out what an equivalent system would be now, and in 3.5 years, the prices have dropped quite a bit. They figure it's down to about $27,750, and an expected payback between 9 and 11 years. So it's like, you know, how can you not go with a payback like that? It's increasing the value of your home, you are green, and you make money on it eventually. Any questions? Yes?
Did it affect your property taxes?
Property taxes, I believe the state actually has a rule that for 15 years the towns are not able to increase your property tax if you install one of these systems. I believe there is a catch that towns on an individual basis may be able to reject that, but it hasn't affected my taxes at all. Anything else? Yes?
Do you need to get a building permit to put the solar panels on your roof?
At the time that I had installed mine, my town did not have any rules on that. I believe they do now, but I did not have to deal with it.
Which town is that?
This is the town of Skodak in Rensselaer. Basically everything, it was a very painless process. The company took care of most of the paperwork. I basically just watched them install it. And wrote them a check, yes. Okay, thank you.
I'm Richter, and like Kevin and Keith, I have a roof-mounted system, and like Keith, it's an older house, or it's a retrofit, unlike Kevin. And as we talked about, one of the first things when you call up an installer, they'll ask you is, how old is your roof? Because they really don't want to put it on an older roof because of the roof issues. So I have a 4.2 kilowatt system, It's 20 panels, 210 watts each, and one 4,000 watt inverter. Now, one of the things that we talked about with you can get higher capacity panels. Typically, the cost per watt of production goes up as you get a higher capacity panel. So there's a balance, but if you need to squeeze panels into a smaller space, it makes sense to get the higher capacity panels. These are made by SunPower. The mounting is on the roof with rails, just like Kevin had, so they're on roof. They're up off the roof a bit. The installer was Alteris Renewables, who had bought out Renewable Power Systems, the same company. And they estimated annual production at about 4.2 kilowatt hours per year, which is probably 40% of my electricity usage. I think in part because I inherited this 80-gallon electric hot water heater, which I'm thinking is just killing me, and I'm really interested in the solar hot water because someday I got to do something about that. The other issue I have is shading, particularly toward the west in the fall, and they estimated my net efficiency with that Pathfinder at 82%, and NYSERDA will only give you the full rebate if you're up at 80%. So I'm kind of right there on the margin, and our house is basically nestled in the woods with a cutout in the woods with trees. And we like the trees, and we decided that that was a hit worth taking, at least till we see how the system performs. So anyway, I have a lot of detail on the pricing and the cost. So the quoted price was about $30,000. The NYSERDA rebate was $12,400. The way that worked was $3,000 per kilowatt for the first 4 kilowatts, and then I think 2,000 thereafter. So there's a cutoff. Now, one of the things that happens is that as the price drops, the street price, if you will, drops. NYSERDA drops the rebate. So, because that was one of the questions I asked myself, well, should I wait? And what she told me is that NYSERDA typically will drop the rebate in sync with falling prices. And as it turns out, I was pretty lucky because I started looking at the system not too long after the big recession started. So the price that people were quoting dropped, but NYSERDA hadn't quite caught up. And they actually dropped their rebate while my paperwork was in process, so I got the higher rebate. So, so my net cost was about $17,500. My federal and state tax credits came to about $9,500. So my net real cost was about $8,000, and that's pretty close to about $1,900 per kilowatt of capacity. So that's what the system looks like. It's a one-story house. It's a flat roof, and you can see that the panels are in portrait mode across the top, and then landscape mode across the bottom. Again, it's a 20-panel system, and we wanted to really get it up as high on the roof as possible because of shading issues. And there's the inside system. It looks very similar to one of the other pictures you saw from Alteris, Renewable Power System. Basically, on the left is the actual meter that measures production. In the middle is the inverter, and on the right, I guess, the control switch. Now, one of the things I can mention is I have a 4.2 kilowatt system and a 4,000 kilowatt inverter. And so the inverter is actually a little bit less than the maximum capacity. And I asked about that, and they said, well, first of all, your efficiency will drop, and second of all, this thing almost never hits the rated production. The highest I've actually seen is, I actually saw it do a little bit over 4, and my best production, and I'm a real data guy, so I go and look at this thing a lot. So my best production has typically been in May, not in June around the solstice, and that may be a function of the angle of the sun, or it may be because it's hotter in June. But in any event, my best power production has been in May. At this past June, even on clear days, I didn't get above about 3,100. the other thing is my peak days are, most of my best days have been again in May. The best day I've seen is about 25 kilowatts for a day. A good day is in the low 20s, 20 to 21, and a really bad day is less than 1 because you really don't get any production when it's really cloudy and raining all day. So here's a graph of production. This is a polar coordinate plot. So the month is going around the circle, and the distance radially from the center is the total production for the month. I've got red in 2010, blue in 2011. You can see that so far 2010 was a much better year than 2011. It's been pretty rainy, and you can also see in January and February and December, this last December, January, February, and even March, production was very poor or even 0. I had snow on my roof. Basically from early January through late March, I got 0 production. So all those things matter. I'm hoping June so far is looking pretty good. July is so far looking pretty good. I may actually end up doing better in July than this year than last year for the first time. And so here's some total production. So I did, just for my first year, which was April 2010 through March 2011, my total production was 3,600 kilowatt hours, which is less than that expectation, and that may be because of all the snow. And I actually looked month by month at what my production was and what my electricity costs were. So my total savings for the year were $618, which comes to a 7.8% of my actual cost, my actual what I paid, which is a pretty good rate of return. And I think that's my last slide. Yeah. So I just want to mention, go back to there, mention a couple of things that I took some notes on that came up as I was listening to other people. You should apply for the property tax exemption. It helped. You also, I actually added some insurance to my house in case the house burned down, because it is a sizable investment. The shading makes a big difference. So my sort of late September production was a lot worse than my March production, and because the leaves aren't out in March, but they are out in September still. Let's see. My installer took care of all the paperwork. Some others, I recommend talking to a couple of companies. Some of the other companies, it was more you do it yourself for the paperwork. The other thing is that at least one company I talked to wanted to charge for an evaluation, and I don't think you should pay for an evaluation. I talked to several companies that would do it for free. There's an appreciable waiting period from the time when you actually sign the contract till they go through the whole NYSERDA business, and then the stuff gets ordered several months. It actually took just a couple of days to put it in, and then you have to wait for your power company to put a net meter on, because you want. What they told me was, with a regular meter, as long as it's the regular meter just knows what's coming through, and you would actually be paying when you're producing power. Don't do that. The other thing is that if you overproduce, you get paid back at a lower rate than your electricity rate. So it's good to really size the system appropriately. When I was buying my system, SunPower, the manufacturer, was actually fronting the money for the federal tax, the tax rebates. So that may be another way to minimize your short-term out-of-pocket costs. And I want to talk, my sister and her husband put in a system in Massachusetts, and they had a pretty bizarre configuration. They actually found an installer who would put lots of inverters on their system so they could take advantage of different times of the day. And that's what I have to say about it. Any questions? Okay. Guess Rob is next.
I just wanted to say a couple things. One that maybe it's not clear yet. I think it's been touched on, but the systems are sized for annual production. So, you know, you're going to make more and sell back power in the summer, and you're going to make less and buy power from the utility in the winter. But you size it hopefully so you come out at least even on an annual basis. And as long as you only make as much as you are using, anything you sell back you get paid at the retail rate, and then above that it's over 100%. It's at the wholesale rate, I guess. It's the easiest way to picture it. So, but size it for annual production. And I hope we have one more speaker, and then I'm going to talk about the incentives and where you get some information, and then hopefully have time for more questions, and Regions will take your questions.
Forgive me.
But I'm hoping, and the intent of this is so that you guys start to realize that this really is doable. It's here, it works, it's not that difficult. A couple of our speakers have told you that the companies generally take care of most of the issues, all of the paperwork they take care of. Some will go and get your building permit if you need a building permit. So really, they'll come out, they'll look for free, give you quotes, talk about different options, and do pretty much all the work, except you have to write them a check, and that's it. Sometimes you have to deal with your town, but not often. But hopefully, the idea of today was to give you the sense that this is doable. The costs have dropped dramatically. Marilyn alluded to, you know, equivalent to the cost of a car, which is true, you know, but that's even before all the incentives and rebates. So it's cost of a good used car at this point out of pocket. So the costs really have come down, and it's doable. So we're going to have our last speaker, and I'll show you a couple other slides and then more Q&A.
Mine was a little bigger, so I think my car's like the BMW or something. So I was with Renewable Power Systems before they were bought out there. And I began my system when I bought a vacant parcel. I was building a house, so I was able to start at scratch. And first we ended up, you know, designing the house we were going to build, and my wife and I decided that the way we wanted to face and the type of roof it was, that it wouldn't receive the panels too well. So then we had to make the decision of, you know, where we're going to put the panels. And I decided that I wanted to have a big work shed. So we ended up sizing the building to carry the panels. And so the building was built for the panels. So that was kind of a convenient way to do it. That's pretty self-explanatory. It was 9.8. I'm not sure what the maximum is right now, but I know they've been trying to push it higher. At the time, the maximum that they allowed residential solar powers to be 10 kW, and it's still the same, and I wish the heck they'd allow people to go higher. And in addition to being a maximum of 10, you're not allowed to oversize the system. It has to be within 110% of what your house needs. And so in my case, my house didn't exist. So this guy, Mike Stengel, who was who owned Renewable Power, they had a program, and they put my house into the computer, and they predicted what my needs would be. And from that, they sized my system.
You went backwards.
Oh, backwards. Yeah. So there's the system. It ended up being, it's actually a shed slash, I make maple syrup too, so it's a sugar house, a storage shed, and it houses my panels. And he completely positioned Mike, through Renewable Power, he was also an Energy Star home rater, and my house was going to be an Energy Star house. And the reason I went that route is because at the time, they were offering $4 per watt, and then if your house that you were building was an Energy Star home, they gave you an extra 50 cents a watt on top of it. So I was like, you know, that kind of was a big incentive for me to really, you know, I'll try to make an Energy Star house, which is, you know, has its own benefits, and on top of that, I'll get a bigger rebate. And so that's So I started this in 2006, sitting with Mike and the company, and they guided me through everything, and I really I trusted him a lot. So I really became dependent on him to guide me through the whole thing. And as others mentioned, he did all the paperwork and basically advised me every step of the way, and it was wonderful. I had a very positive experience with them. I haven't seen anyone mention this. Mike didn't install this, but Altiris, like within 3 months of them buying him out, they came to my house and they said, we want to do something to your system. And as everyone said, the system is above the roof, and I already had the problem with starlings getting underneath it. And I didn't even ask them. I was burdening myself with getting up there and digging them out and preventing them and getting all the nesting material from underneath the panels. But they went and they installed this without a dime. They just did it on their own. So that was a great thing for them to do for me. I think I have a couple different pictures of it. And they did that around the whole perimeter of the system. And it's worked great. No more starlings. There's inside the shed, there is a separate shutoff system you see on the right. I have 2 inverters, so the panels, the whole system is actually split in 2. And there's a shutoff for each one, and that's right in that shed right there. Then it makes its way to the basement, of course, and the majority of the system was able to be handled through 1 inverter, so I didn't have to buy a full size, an equal size inverter. The second inverter could be smaller. And everyone mentions, I don't have it, I thought I had it in this picture, this is already discussed.